Starting recording.
Yep, Kyle is recording the call.
Avoid legal snags by telling people they're being recorded. It's good advice.
Yes, it is.
How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I can't complain.
Good. I don't know if this is a little weird because like my camera's off to the side here and my laptop like next to it, so I'm looking at you like off to the side from the
camera. Yeah, I hear you. It's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, look at the camera.
Yeah. Hi, fourth wall. All right. Let's get started officially. Welcome to another episode of Gadgetcast. Our first video episode.
Yep.
Actually. So, yeah, there's a lot going on. Today is, Sunday, the 31st of May, 2020.
Yep.
There's been a lot going on.
Yes.
I wanted to know, like, how are you doing? How are you been doing? Like, especially this week, how are you coping?
I'm coping okay, man. What's going on? It's sad to say, it's nothing new.
Right.
We've seen stuff like this before, and I don't know if you would ever get immune to it. But like, how much more outraged can you get? The one that I like to bring up all the time is Philando Castile, a legal gun owner. He gets pulled over by the police, and it within a few seconds of him being stopped by the police, he's shot dead.
Right.
And I don't know what was going on through that cop's mind or whatever. In that instance, I'll say that one, yes, as tragic as it was, I guess I can kind of, understand that, hey, when you know that someone has a gun, you might be a little bit on edge. But when you ask them to provide identification, whatever, I have to move to do that. In the instance of George Floyd, I find it hard to understand, especially like, the one camera angle that is behind the showing the one officer on his neck. You can't see the other two that are restraining him behind the SUV.
Right.
So, that one may be a little bit misleading where you see that and you say, well, it's just one guy restraining him. But when you go around the other side of the vehicle and you can see the other two, then you start to, one, ask, why did it take all three of them? Because, to me, he was already handcuffed. The other two should have been able to easily restrain him without applying pressure to his neck. Now, I know the initial medical examiner's report said that he didn't die of asphyxiation, etc. Okay, that's fine. But still, why would you have to put your knee in his neck? Like, what? Like, again, that's a lot of weight. You got three guys, one guy on his legs, but the other two are on his upper body. Why would it take all of that to restrain this man?
I'll say personally, this is something that I thought was really weird. I was talking about this with another friend of mine that if you've ever looked at other autopsies, which grim as that is, I have. One of the things that struck me about this one is that instead of just describing what was and what there is and what the evidence was that they saw, that autopsy report kind of went about describing what wasn't. Oh, I don't see evidence of this. Well, okay, then what did kill him? That's really what you normally see in it.
Right.
Which raises a red flag for me personally, looking at it, that it was really, set out to prove a point more than to. But they're going to get a second opinion, as I understand. The family's purchasing an autopsy from a retired, respected medical examiner.
and rightfully so. You know, the thing, and I don't know exactly who it was. It was a press conference 2 days ago where they, after the arrest of the officer, they said that there was additional evidence. He didn't give any details, but he said that there was additional evidence that led to them arresting this officer. Okay, so what evidence did you have? I mean, you know, the video to me was like, you know, the minimum that you can call that was negligence. That's a minimum.
Well,
You're right. You know, but still, the result was a man lost his life.
right.
Yeah. And too many times we haven't held officers accountable. And I like, you know, these are men and women that have been empowered with the power of life and death. They carry, you know, their pistols, their sidearms. You know, they have the authority to shoot someone, which could ultimately lead to someone's death.
Right. Well, that's
so to the point. Do that with some kind of responsibility, but too many times we've seen where things happens and situations, and I don't have, you know, knowledge about all of them. I wasn't there. It's a lot of times secondhand, but you know, you're telling me in the years that, you know, police, you know, have been an institution, police officers and departments that you know, very, like, there's never been a instance of negligence, and you know, like the number of convictions because police have, you know, actually killed someone is very low. That percentage is like unreasonably low when you think about it. You're telling me that all of these people acted responsibly? Because, you know, when you think about it, we have bad people in any occupation. You know, I'm a network engineer. There's bad network engineers. There's bad doctors. There's bad nurses. There's bad whatever. Yeah. And you're telling me like there's no bad cops? Like, you know, they're not all out there selling drugs and, you know, like what you see on The Wire and you know, The Shield. They're not out there like that. There's some, like this officer who, you know, I'm going to kneel on someone's neck. That's excessive. And it resulted in someone's death. And to me, the only thing that even led to him being arrested and possibly convicted was that there were video cameras around. Right. If there were, if there was no video evidence, then
I don't know. Did you see Trevor Noah's recording? I had posted it the other day. So I thought that was a really insightful point that he made. That you know, this is just. It's, you know, you have to look through the history of what's happened, and this is just one of the dominoes that fell. Right. And if you look at the previous dominoes that happened just in the last couple of weeks, the reaction that we're seeing across the country, the emotion, the rage, really goes down to a deeper core issue, which is the social contract that we have between the government, like you mentioned, the government and its representatives in law enforcement who enforce government's laws hold the special place in society because our most sacred taboo is to take another human life. Murder is the highest crime. Right. And they're the only group in society that can legally take a life. Yep. So they have a special responsibility with that. With power comes responsibility. So the thing is that over time, you know, it's such a hard thing for even for me talking to other white people, because I grew up in small town white America, and I've seen firsthand how people become tribal and can see other human beings as the other. And I see what I'm a minority. I'm weird in this, in the fact that I grew up on way too much Star Trek. You know, I wasn't around other people enough, I think, to get, I'm too much of a nerd. And so my problem is it's too easy for me. I know this might even seem offensive. This actually has. I have offended other people saying this before, but this is just my personal belief. I identify with other people as humans. before anything else, right? Because I see us as we are literally the only intelligent life in the universe we know. On this one little blue dot in the universe, we're the only intelligent species.
Right.
The things that we have in common are vast. And when you look at the things that divide us, they're insignificant and cosmetic mostly. And if you look at it from the perspective of someone outside, if you think of yourself in the future, and I'm looking back at Earth history, human history, to me, Black history is my history because it's human history.
Right.
But so to me, it's one of those things. I identify with people as human first. So to me, to put myself in someone else's shoes isn't super hard, you know? So when I read stories about things that have happened in the past, you know, the thing people don't understand is we're only seeing this, we're only making a deal out of this because he died on film. Like, like he said, how many other people had knees on necks that didn't die and weren't on film?
Right.
You know?
Yep.
That's what's behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. I you know, it's one of those situations, dude. I don't have any answers because, like I said, this has happened before. It's happened so many times. It's not the same way, you know, every time. It's so many different ways, but it's like, you know, how many times can we sit up here and say, like, you know, we're getting killed. And you know, people now are saying, okay, like I went to Ace Hardware before we started this podcast, and while I was waiting in line, this older white gentleman, we started talking, and you know, at first we were talking about his house, or I take it as his daughter's house because of the way he was talking, but you know, he was doing some work around there, and eventually I didn't bring it up. He brought up the rioting. And he says, yeah, you know, they shouldn't be rioting, you know, and it's these outside agitators. He said Black Lives Matters and Antifa. So, I said, okay, well, I said,
I think it's obvious there are agitators. I don't know about Black Lives Matters though.
Exactly, and that's what I told him.
The film that dude was a white dude with the umbrella.
Yes.
That was more like an anarchist thing, like Black Flag. That really reeked of that.
So my response to him, I said, I can't speak really on Antifa. You know, I don't know if they are some of those that are out there, you know, breaking windows and, you know, things like that. But I said, think about it this way. I said, Black Lives Matters. I said, we are talking now and the focus is on the riots. George Floyd has become a you know, topic in that discussion. I said, to me, it would be contrary for, you know, or counter to their, you know, purpose for Black Lives Matters to be doing that. When now we're not talking about George Floyd. We're talking about riots. So, you know, that to me would not make sense. And he said, well, yeah, you might be right about that. So I was happy that we could come to some kind of understanding, at least on that point.
Right.
But, you know, and there's been a lot of people that have been posting memes behind regards to this. And, you know, so it wasn't okay for Colin Kaepernick in his protests as you know, innocent as that was. You know, hey, all I'm doing is I'm kneeling, you know, during the national
anthem. I know. That's the whole thing. And they say, the same people who criticized him are now going, well, why can't they protest peacefully? I'm like, he did.
Right. and so
you said that was the wrong way to do it.
Exactly. So you know, and again, I don't know exactly the makeup of the crowds that are out there. You know, you can't distinguish a lot of times between peaceful protesters and the people that are causing the chaos out there on the streets and the riots. You know, I get it. I mean, you know, with me just watching the TV and I'm not out there on the ground. And, even if I was, I probably wouldn't be able to tell because I can't see every place at one time. But, that's where we as Americans have to think this is like a pot that you have on the stove, and you got so many ingredients on it and the temperature's too high. Eventually it's going to boil over. And and again, after so many events that have transpired over the years, what's the expectation? You're telling people that are getting killed, well, you shouldn't protest this way. How should I protest? Because I tried it that way and you had a problem with it that way. So now when I tried this, do I have your attention now? Oh, I do. Okay. Can we now discuss how we move forward?
At a certain point, it's, the redressance of grievances. And at a certain point, if you try to redress it peacefully and you try repeatedly and you're rebuffed at every turn, it's like that. There's a quote, I don't know who said it, but it's if you make peaceful protest impossible, you make violent revolution inevitable. Because where else they have to go? I mean, and it's literally the same argument that the founding fathers made when they said, look, we tried everything else we could with King George. He gave us no other choice. We had to break from him and form our own government. So at what point, and then they established in our founding documents that the people have a right to do that. So but with that knowledge, at some point, what does that look like?
But hey, the fine print, Kyle, is that it's only certain people.
And that's,
that
was the that's the thing, it really does come down to that social contract that there is, when they talk about white privilege, it is one of those things that I know from experience that white people grow up with pretty much a certainty that the social contract includes us, that it meant us, even though we learn in school it's kind of, it really didn't, it meant landowners. And it's like, we look at that and go, oh, well, my parents own their house, so I guess that would sort of be us. And it's like, no, that wasn't how it worked back then. You guys would have been serfs working for, the Sears or, the Walmart at the time, whatever. And so they have this internalized, though, that, when the social contract, then the police protect and serve, that it's them. Like, what was that lady's name? Cooper?
Amy Cooper.
Amy Cooper.
Yeah.
Who, it was brave. I mean, it was one of those things where, it's like watching someone betray their best friend in a way where you're just like, holy crap, that was low. That was like really low what that person just did.
And of course I've had discussions with people online and in person about that situation. The thing that, what she did was, and she didn't in a straightforward manner say, I'm threatening your life or whatever. But that's what the underlying message was. Because, and this is what I told someone. You're the 911 operator. You can't see the situation that's going on. All you hear is that this woman, she's calling and saying an African-American man is threatening me. And her voice is escalating. Is to the point where she's panicked. Now, again, you're the 911 operator. So, hey, police, you got to get out here. This woman is about to get killed. You don't know what she said to, or whoever the 911 operator was. But so now the police could come and they could be in an agitated state, thinking that, hey, we got a black guy out here, doing whatever. And so, but the message that we as everybody else has to take is, what would make her think that this was an avenue to even take? 911 is being weaponized to the point that she knows it subconsciously. She knew it, and that she could pick up that phone.
It wasn't even subconscious. She had
Well,
taken that knowledge and
right.
actively weaponized it.
Well, right.
That
But
was the whole thing. Is
yeah.
she knew, like you said, is she didn't have to come out and say that I'm threatening I'm threatening your life with the police. She knew the
Right.
subtext that I'm going to call the police and say a black man's threatening me.
Right.
That's enough. That's happened enough that just saying that was the threat.
Well,
And
right.
it was
But
totally
I mean,
understood.
again, it's we've got, all kind of video on
Let me say
YouTube.
this is the frustrating thing too. When dealing with a lot of white people who there is only a certain select number of white people who really have the ability to, well, people in general, right? But, among the subset of people, there's only so many people who have empathy, who have the ability to put themselves in somebody else's shoes, right? To try to feel what someone else would feel. And so among those few white people, there's apparently also a subsection who will take that and use it because it's normally empathy is really the solution to this, right? And that's really the underside of the seedy underbelly of all this, is the fact that the ability to empathize and understand other people really is the solution to this. But at the same time, there are people who will even abuse that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because, and it's not up yet. I went to church today. So the pastor, he gave a very good sermon about, he touched upon George Floyd and the current situation. But, one of the things that he talked about was, the American sin of slavery and how, America hasn't really repented, for slavery, and one of those things that, I think a lot of people think, okay, if we acknowledge that and that responsibility, our responsibility for that, or even if, your indirect responsibility for that because of your ancestors, that now we will have to, acknowledge that reparations might be in order. And so he tied that in with, hey, in the Bible, it talks about restitution and basically reparations, that, hey, if you feel that you've sinned against, someone, that, right, you're supposed to leave your offering at the altar and go and make that right with them, and that you may have to pay them back fourfold or whatever. And so now that might be a scary proposition, but what was funny about his sermon was he said, so we're talking about the stimulus, with everything that's going on with Corona and the stimulus package that, was passed, this first one. And now there are initial discussions about another round of stimulus packages. So
and the people in the Senate have basically said that's not going to go anywhere.
Well,
so.
right. But now the discussion is talking about, well, wait a minute, I don't want my children's children or, future, generations to be stuck with the debt of what I'm doing now or whatever. And so imagine if they did, and, they pass, another round or two rounds of additional stimulus, and we built up the debt to such a massive thing or whatever. And then, 3-4 generations down the road, they say, hey, you know what? I don't want to pay this. I don't, this is debt that, I had nothing to do with it. It was my great grandpappy or whatever that passed the stimulus or received it. I don't want anything to do with it. And they said, nope, I don't owe you anything. And he tied that in to the sin of slavery. And, like, hey, that's basically what America has done, that, you haven't been repentant enough or whatever, and acknowledge that, to the fact that it's changed you and subsequently any further generations. So now that we're still dealing with it, and we are. I mean, George Floyd's death is a great example of what we are still dealing with, where those officers, the one in particular on his neck, but even the ones that just stood by, the Asian, officer that just stood and kept people back, like, no, none of them had enough empathy to say, we got him. You don't need to sit on his kneel on his neck anymore. We got it.
Right.
And right. So we're still dealing with that.
And he was the agent. Yeah. Like you said, he was the agent in charge of that scene. Or, well, no, the Asian guy was his partner.
Yeah. And from what I
was
come
another
to find
point
out,
that
it was
someone else
actually
had
his
brought up.
brother-in-law.
What's that?
That officer is his brother-in-law.
Is it really?
Yes.
I hadn't heard that part.
Yeah.
So that's actually, it's funny because it's when a lot of white people hear reparations.
Yep.
They think that, they want to take everything from the white people. In fact, that was articulated to me by one of my loved ones, who shall remain nameless, but in 2007, I think, when Barack Obama was campaigning, it was still early in primary. She had said something to me that really struck me about the way she viewed the world, and it was that she said she wasn't in favor of Obama, and with a totally straight face, and totally seriously, and you couldn't understand what was wrong with what she said. She said to me, well, I'm afraid that I don't favor Obama because I'm afraid he's going to give everything to the blacks.
Right. Oh yeah. He was going to give us all phones and and checks and all that.
She was like, literally, like, you could see her. He's going to give everything. Like, she thought they were going to come take some of her stuff and go give it to, like, what I mean, like, it shows a very small world in a way.
It's well, yeah, at its base form is fear mongering. So, whatever I can do to make you afraid of whoever, the big bad boogeyman. That's what that is.
To fear monger, though, is to use the fear against people, and that actually takes an amount of self-awareness of what's going on. And then there's the people, though, that they are manipulating, right? That the fear mongers are, and I think that's what one of my loved ones fell into. That's the category, is that they were being, and that's what I think, honestly, right now with this pandemic, that's what's happening. Millions of people are just being manipulated. And that's kind of to bring all of this at a half an hour, now that we're a half hour into the show, to bring it into tech news, somewhat peripherally related to technology. The way that all of this has been shaped, from the pandemic to the way that it was handled, from the panic that happened in March. Right? Because everybody saw this slow progress of this virus coming from December, right? We knew about it. We were reading it in the news. We saw the Chinese shut down a city of 30 million people. We saw them build 2 hospitals in a week. We knew this was serious when we saw that stuff.
Yep. And
so when we saw our president dismissing it and calling the warnings about it a hoax,
right.
It's like, so, and nobody, and that's the thing about this particular time, is that we have a president who really can't be questioned on that. When he calls the warnings a hoax and the press tries to push back and they say, wait a minute, the Chinese just built 2 hospitals in a week. Why would they do that if this is a hoax? They shut down a whole city. They're hurting their own economy. Why would this be a hoax? Nobody could do that, because the minute they try to push back on the president, they're being nasty to him. They're being unfair to him.
Oh, right.
So dissent and even honest questioning of the government has been silenced. So when it came to March and all the governors had to decide, well, shit, now it's here. It's about to spread. What do we do? And it started with a Republican governor in Ohio, Mark DeWine, who shut down schools first.
Yeah.
And then all the other governors, it was like dominoes, just like Trevor Noah said. The dominoes started falling and all the states started shutting down. And it was all the businesses tell everybody stay home,
right,
or started laying off.
Yeah.
And that's another domino,
Did you hear the news where they said that 40% of these jobs will disappear?
No.
Yeah, I just heard that on the news. What 3 days ago, where they said 40% of those, they estimated 40% of those jobs will not return. And so again, I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not, but just the possibility of that occurring,
Right.
again, and I never took this booming economy that we've
It
been
was an
told
inflated
about for the
bubble.
past. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these jobs have been in the service industry, with restaurants and whatnot. What do you expect from that? I mean, I've been talking about this for years with my wife that, hey, we need to eat out less. So,
Right. Yeah.
again, what's that going to do to the economy that's boosted on, hey, we need to open up a restaurant, on every corner? I mean, you go up here on Hall Road and between, Shaner and I don't know, way like Romeo Plank, it's nothing but restaurants, two there. Here's another 3 across the street. I mean,
Right.
they're everywhere. And
Yeah.
it's ridiculous, dude.
Well, in a lot of that industry, the big industries, like the big restaurant chains, are built on profit models that are based on the server's wage.
Right.
That still exists to this day for some
Yeah.
ungodly reason. I have no idea why they keep, $3 an hour or whatever it is now, if it's even that.
Hey, yeah, and you got to make it up on tips.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's the whole thing is that it's literally, they talk about America being the land of the free. And, freedom is one of those things FDR talked about is, we need to have another discussion about what being free means, because a lot of people in America right now think that freedom means the ability to go get a haircut or own a gun, and that's it. And they really don't. Or to spout whatever they want online with no repercussions.
Right. Well, I can say and do anything that I want, but you can't.
Right.
You better not burn that flag. You better not kneel during the national anthem.
Right.
You better not do that.
Right.
Because that's not freedom of speech. That's wrong. That's against my country and this and that.
So I know, and this is one of those things that gets me, right? The same president who demanded that they fire Colin Kaepernick for kneeling in peaceful protest of police brutality is now claiming he's going to uphold the honor of George Floyd by going in with troops and shooting people.
Right. Yeah. Right. And it's telling that, I had plenty of discussions with those that don't think like me about, President Trump and, whether I believe he's racist or not. Now, listen, he hasn't come out and said
everyone is racist.
Well, right. But listen, this is the thing. I don't believe that most racists are going to come out and say, you N-word this or, and do something as overt as what a lot of people need to say, oh, that person is a racist. That's not the current day and age that we live in. It's a lot more subtlety to it. It's a lot more covert. And so, I think it's telling that he quoted another known racist to say, when the looting starts, the shooting starts.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people do you know that sit up here and they quote bad people? I mean, nobody quotes Hitler, and says, hey, I'm a good person.
Normal people don't do
that.
Yeah.
Nobody does that. Nobody quotes evil people and then say, but I'm not like that.
Right. Yeah. I don't think like that. Well, you keep quoting them.
Right. Exactly. I mean, come on.
Yeah. So it is one of those things that I did want to. So we've talked about, honestly, we've talked about changing the name of the show before because we keep coming back to the fact that the internet, the downside to the internet, right? Making us all dumber.
Mm-hmm.
In this instance, it's literally, it's adding fuel to the fire, and the president knows it. He's
Oh yeah,
using Twitter, his 80 million followers on Twitter, even though most of them are
a lot of
bots.
bots, right?
But still, that's 30 million legitimate followers.
Right.
That he's throwing out kindling, like he's the stuff he says is incendiary, and I think it's on
Mm-hmm.
purpose because he
Right.
knows what he's saying.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
so at a certain point, this is almost becoming it's more than a nuisance now. Now it's becoming a threat to a clear and present danger to both people, property, and national security. So at what point gets me, this president, I mean, I remember thinking George Bush was bad. And I remember thinking like, I had all the disagreements with him, but this is cartoonishly bad.
Oh yeah, right.
This is literally
it's farcical. It's farcical.
It is. It's television villain bad.
Yeah, but my thing is
Reality TV almost.
right. It is, but at what point do you? Because the people that support him, a lot of people that support him, not all of them, but the people that I've talked, a lot of them that support him that I've talked to, have this like, oh, he's gonna bring us together. Now, I don't know who he's going to bring together when, like you said, he's giving incendiary language.
Yeah.
He talks about, oh, these neo-Nazis and these black folks protesting them, or these other people on the other side, they're all good people. Okay. That right there, like, most reasonable people would not make a statement like that. Nobody says, like, hey, Superman and Lex Luthor and they're fighting or whatever. Nobody says Lex Luthor is a good guy too. Nobody says that. So, he's not bringing.
It's a common plot that he pretends to be a good guy.
Right, exactly. I mean, but I don't see how anybody could even believe that the President Trump, I don't care how many terms he would serve, whether it was 1, 2, 3, whatever.
Yeah.
There's no way that he's going to bring anyone together. He has his coalition, and
he's actively being divisive. Yeah, I mean, when he tweeted out that people should liberate themselves in all caps,
right?
That was, he threw down the gauntlet. He was basically saying, he was done supporting this pandemic response.
Right.
So it's, the thing to me is, where do we go from here? How do you? I mean, it's funny because before it seems to be getting actively worse. And I'm going like, you're first going, oh my gosh, we've got a small kitchen fire. How do we put out this kitchen fire? Oh, by the way, the living room's on fire too. Oh shit, how do we put that out?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, dude, I don't recall any news cycles, under a lot of other presidents that have been this chaotic. And, we jumped from one emergency to the next.
Yeah.
Like, in a lot of different, like, George Bush, the second one.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you had the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq or whatever, but most times it would be some calm between events. We haven't had that. I mean, we literally haven't had that in the last 3+ years.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Jeb Bush was actually right when he called Trump. Jeb Bush was actually right when he called Trump the chaos president.
Yes.
He was absolutely right.
Yeah.
That's what he's turned out to be.
And right. And a lot of people, that voted for him, oh, he's going to, change Washington and this and that, this is my thought process on that. Listen, let's forget about the presidency changing Washington. It's the House and the Senate that will change Washington. If you want to, if you want to actually change You have to vote out, and and I don't want to hear this argument. Oh, it's all the liberals' fault, or all the conservatives' fault.
No.
It's the fact that nobody's willing to work with the other side to get things accomplished.
Right.
We have, like you said, this tribalism where you are bad. It's the blanket. Like, hey, like now they're talking about a good Democrat is a dead Democrat, and I mean, like, people are like, they're not even like
that's not new. And that's
right. No, it's not new, but it's the fact that they're openly, like a lot of people openly saying that's what I believe and that's what I feel is what's different now.
Right. They're saying it amongst themselves, and then when they get called on it in the media, he just poo-poos it like, well, I didn't mean any harm to anybody.
No. Now they're like,
just literally called for harm to people. You called to kill people.
Yeah. Exactly.
But, and then he walks away from that.
Yeah. But again, the fact of the matter is our government is built on the fact that people will work together. That's how this country was established, to do things. You're not going to have someone from, the East Coast and up, Manhattan or wherever, thinking the exact same thing as someone who might be from the lower or southern part of Texas or Alabama. They're not necessarily gonna think the same thing on a lot of different or various topics. But guess what? We can at least agree on this, and maybe we can work on that. Yeah. But they're not doing that. It's like, hey, you got a D at next to your name, or you got an R. I'm not working with you.
Right.
It's like, that's crazy.
It's actually, I've had this discussion with people for a long time, and it's beyond being convinced now. I know it to be true for a fact because I've seen it demonstrated over and over. George Washington was right, in his retirement speeches when he warned political parties will be the downfall of this union, because there's nothing in any of our founding documents, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, there's nothing about political parties.
Right.
They don't have rights. They're not enumerated anywhere. They're not recognized as entities.
Right.
But what they do is they short circuit all of the checks and balances. So honestly, and this is the thing that to come back to what you're saying is really what it comes down to when people say left versus right and stuff, is that it's people think that we're divided, it's them versus us. It is, we are literally caught in a game of good cop, bad cop. Both sides are run by the same forces, the same powers, the 1%. Donald Trump even said it before when he was campaigning. He said, I donate to both parties. Right. Because that way he has influence. That's the way it works. Right. It's run by the money. Yeah. And it's literally, and I've had this discussion with people, the best way I know to put it personally is the government is a tool, right? People who blame the government are literally blaming the gun for the shooting. So it's the government is nothing but a tool, and someone is using it against you. It's not the government acting on its own. It's not alive. There's a person behind that in power, or funding the person in power and telling him what to do. Well, we're going to have to, okay. Yeah. So yeah, anyway, it's, what it comes down to is people need to get involved. People want to know, we live in a two-party system. We don't have multiple parties, third parties, because we have a first past the post, winner take all system. Third parties are nothing but spoilers in our system. Right. Your choices are either you amend the Constitution to change that, or you work within the system we have. And what that means is you have to take control of the tool. You have to take control of one of those. And because our system has been hacked by these political parties, that means that you have to take control of a political party. Right. That's what has to happen. Yeah. Right now we have two conservative parties. The Democratic Party really just needs to be taken over. People need to join the Democrat. I mean, as sick as that sounds in a way, they need to go join the Democratic Party, volunteer for events, take leadership positions, and take it over. Honestly, that's kind of what needs to happen, and then support other people who have that same agenda. Right.
No, I hear you. Yeah. I don't know what the solution would be, man, because it's so big. you know, and unfortunately, because we have such a limited lifespan, I mean, seriously, yeah, I can live to, you know, 100 years old, but you know what? I'm almost halfway there. And you know what? At 90 something, I'm not worried about politics and you know this.
Right.
I'm worried about whether I can get up out the bed, you know, pain free or not.
Yeah.
So,
well, yeah, you're right. A lot of this, it's funny because when you study history, you see that a lot of these events that are happening around us are shaped by tidal forces that have existed before we were born and that are going to continue after we're born. The best we can hope for is to influence it a little.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, minute turns or whatever that, you know, eventually, hey, we ended up in a good place rather than, oh, we're screwed up. We need to start all over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
hey,
man.
so
we actually are out of time. I'm afraid we got to wrap up.
We got to do this again, man. We got to, you know, especially if this, you know, turns out good. You know, I don't know if you will be able to work on the audio or not, or insert the music, but yeah,
we'll see. Yeah. So this will be a test of my editing skills, my novice editing skills. So we'll see.
I believe in you, Kyle. I believe.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us for this episode. This is our first video episode. And we'll see you hopefully next week. What I'd like to do is bring in hopefully more people.
Yeah.
And
that would be good.
Maybe do and you know, because like you said, I don't have an answer, you don't have the answer, but maybe we can bring in other people in a discussion.
Yeah.
Maybe we can...
you know, one of my professors said, you know, complex problems, you know, require complex solutions.
Yes.
So
yeah, that makes sense. All right, man.
All right.
You take care.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.